I see you again? When will I see you again? When will I see you again?
Hi guys, John Florez again, and here we go, the really, really good one, I think. Tell me what you think. We'll see how it goes. Okay, so Johnny Mathis. I didn't know Johnny Mathis. I wasn't even thinking of producing Johnny Mathis. I was just out there at the time producing the Friends of Distinction and Willie Hutch and Five Flights Up, Carl Graves, Hughes Corporation, all that stuff. And then I heard a singer who happened to have the lead role in the Broadway musical Hair, Ronnie Dyson. I thought, oh my God, I love his voice. There's nothing like it. It's so unique. The minute you hear him, you know that it's Ronnie.
Then out of my wildest dreams, you're standing at the door, reaching out those tender arms that held me once before. Please don't wake me. I think I must be dreaming. 'Cause suddenly my eyes keep seeing you.
So I thought, I have to produce him. So I got on the phone and called my partner, Harvey Cooper, who's just a wonderful man and famous record promoter. And I said, Harvey, call Columbia Records in New York. I assume you know someone there. Get me Ronnie Dyson and tell them I'll do Ronnie for free. I'll produce his project for free. And Harvey said, are you out of your mind? And I said, no, I want to work with him so badly. Please call and get me Ronnie Dyson. So a little time elapses and Harvey calls me back and says, John, here's the deal. I got you Ronnie for free, but you just can't deal like this. You're giving yourself away. So I made a bargain for you. You'll produce the Ronnie Dyson project for free, and you are guaranteed the next Johnny Mathis album. I said, what? And he said, yeah, that's the deal. So you want to do Ronnie Dyson, you got to do Johnny Mathis. I said, well, okay, this sounds good to me. Thank you, Harvey. You made a great deal. So I did Ronnie, and I loved the way those tracks came out. And I don't care if Columbia had trouble promoting them. I liked them. And so did Ronnie, frankly. So great tracks. And then it's time, I don't know, a year later to do the Johnny Mathis album. You see, I don't know, this kind of project was new to me. I'd never worked with an adult contemporary artist like Johnny Mathis or Tony Bennett or at the time Vicky Carr. Those folks, never done it, didn't know what to do. But my best friend and arranger-composer, Darnielle Pershing, had done 7 prior albums with John. That's what Johnny Mathis likes to be called, is John. So Darnielle can get me through this because I don't know what I'm doing. I just don't have a clue. And Mickey Eichner, our contact at Columbia Records, said, well, we'll take a lot of the guesswork out of this for you, John. We're going to pick most of the tunes for you. They're all cover tunes, and here you go. Here's the list of what you have to record. And then you can do a couple of the ones you guys want to do on top of that, okay? Here's the list. Oh, really? So to make a long story short, this project was absolutely effortless because Darnielle did all the work. All I had to do was show up and sit in the producer's chair and say, okay, that sounds good. Sorry, it took no creative skills whatsoever. Darnielle just wrote beautiful orchestrations, and I made sure they were recorded okay with my dear friend Grover Helsley, who was our engineer. Okay, so that's all good. We got all these tracks done. Live orchestra, John sang in the vocal booth, and one of them we actually used that he sang in the vocal booth live, and that was our single, You're as Right as Rain, which was a Tom Bell, Linda Creed song. Okay, but the rest of them, John wanted to come in and re-record the vocals and get them just the way he wanted. So night number 1, he shows up to do his lead vocals, and it's going just awfully. Remember my telling you how I couldn't get a lead vocal out of Helen Reddy? Well, as the evening began with John Mathis, I couldn't get one out of him either. So I pulled him aside and I said, John, is there anything I can do? It's not going great. What's up? And he said, to me. He said, John, I've worked with probably 17 producers in 17 years, and I don't know you really, and I don't know your engineer, Grover Helsley, and I've never worked in this gargantuan studio that, I don't know, the Henry Mancini Orchestra records in. Hundreds of people can get in there, and he's standing all by himself in this room. He said, this is all new and frankly uncomfortable to me. I assume I'll get it at some point, but at this point, I'm just not comfortable. And I said, okay, well, I have an idea. Let's try this. So I brought him out a radio speaker and I put it on his music stand and I said, John, take off your headphones where you're listening to yourself sing to your tracks. I'll play you those tracks over the radio speaker and just for a while sing along to it as if you're singing to the radio in your car. And so we turn on his tracks, the radio speaker goes on, John starts singing without headphones, just singing to the radio. And about, 30 seconds, 1 minute later, it was really fast. He said, okay, that's enough. And then he put his headphones on and sang the entire album that evening, back to back to back to back songs. Just utterly a thorough professional and an amazing evening. Now, he did come back to redo one of those that he wasn't quite happy with, but frankly, they all just sounded great. So the album took like no time to produce because we were given the songs. Rehearsals were real fast. Full orchestra, which means you're not tracking and overdubbing endlessly. So I'd say the project was done in a month, and Columbia released Yours Right as Rain as the single. It didn't do anything, but the album was out there. Now, I made the dumbest move. Remember, I shouldn't have ever been an independent record producer. I didn't know how to do that. I didn't know how to play the game. I'm walking around New York City with copies of the Mathis album in my hand, handing them out to Jerry Wexler and all these record executives saying, here's my latest album. Well, they could give a shit. It's a Johnny Mathis middle-of-the-road album. It had nothing to do with what was on the Billboard Hot 100 charts. This was an album for old folks, basically, and it's also an album for worldwide listeners. Well, I didn't know this, but Carol and I have moved up to Ojai near Santa Barbara, and our financial manager calls and says, you're not going to believe this. I'm looking at a check from Columbia Records for your When Will I See You Again Johnny Mathis album. It's $100,000 plus first royalty check, worldwide royalties. Well, hello. And I did Ronnie Dyson for free. Pretty good deal, huh? But no, I wanted to do Ronnie Dyson. I was neutral about doing Johnny Mathis because it wasn't really kind of what I did. I did pop soul acts and not traditional middle of the road acts. But holy shit, worldwide royalties. See, I came from RCA where they couldn't sell albums if they tried unless it was on Elvis or one of their superstars. So I'm used to getting $100,000 from RCA for Rock the Boat's first royalty check, and that was 3 or 4 million singles sold, not albums. The Hughes Corporation's album with Rock the Boat on it did virtually nothing. I didn't make a lot of money off of that. But the single, I made good bucks and continued to for 30 years, 40 years, so that's really great. But in the short run, the Johnny Mathis album almost outperformed a #1 record in the United States with Rock the Boat. Go figure. No hits, just album sales across the world. I learned something. And then I've told you the Clive Davis story where he offered Richard Perry 3 of those middle-of-the-road artists, and Richard Perry turned him down. And Clive says, well, he was right to. Richard wants to make the big bucks producing modern hit records. And you, John, probably would have snapped up that offer in a heartbeat, wouldn't you? And I said, yeah. Look, I don't care about making big monster hit records. I want to make records. And if I'm working with artists like this, Johnny Mathis, Tony Bennett, Vicky Carr, go down the list, it takes a month to make those records. That's all. You get international sales, you pocket that money, and there's virtually no effort involved at all. They're done full orchestra. These famous artists, these middle-of-the-road artists, they show up straight, on time, dedicated. They've rehearsed their material. They're ready to go. They're in and out, just the way I was trained as a line producer at RCA. Get in the studio, get out of the studio, make your next record. That's the way I was trained. So Darnielle Pershing, my best friend and arranger-conductor, did a beautiful job on the Johnny Mathis When Will I See You Again album, and he had been John Mathis's worldwide conductor for several years before I met him, and he had arranged, I think, 7 Mathis albums before he did ours. So he knew John extremely well. And over coffee one day, Darnielle said, by the way, don't ask John for anything. Don't ask him for any favors because he's not going to do them for you, John. His only interest is going into the studio, making records, and getting back on the golf course. That's what he wants to do. He's not going to go do something special for you. So I want to give you a couple examples of that really being true. Number one is we had this great Pat McManus song called Odds and Ends. Oh, so pretty. And it was absolutely perfect for Johnny Mathis.
Odds and ends, misplaced friends, a flower bed we grew along the way. Odds and ends, the flowers bend, I'll plant another seed and start again.
I played him the demo, and he said, you own the publishing on this, don't you, John? And I said, yeah, I do. He said, in that case, what else have you got? So unlike The Fifth Dimension that said, No Love in the Room, that's a great song. I know you own the publishing. Maybe we can split the publishing, John, because we really want to do the song. John Mathis says, great song, but you publish it. No, don't want to do it. Well, that was Darnielle's advice first time around. You're not going to believe this story, but it's true. This is the big one. This is the really big one of not going out of his way for me, or even slightly out of his way for me. A few years later, Mary Mather, my second wife, and I went to see a Mathis concert and went backstage to see him after the show. And I said, John, I know that Denny Diante, my friend, has been producing your albums lately, and I don't want to get in the way of that relationship at all. But I've got an idea for you, and I'd like you to consider it. If you decide down the line that you'd like to do it, please ask Denny his permission to let me do that one, and he can do all the rest. Or anybody else can do the others. But I want to do this one. And he said, what is it, John? And I said, pick a composer, George Gershwin, I don't know, or a group of composers, and let's do a Johnny Mathis composers album. And he looks at me like I'm out of my mind. And he said, John, do you know how old I am? I was probably 50 at the time. I don't know. But he said, if I sang those old tunes, I'd really be a dinosaur. No, I'm not interested. Don't want to do it. But, good idea. Thanks for trying. And it's nice to see you. And he's very warm on a personal level. And I think we have a mutual affection for each other. That's cool. So John turns down my composer's album idea, which, by the way, Tony Bennett had a big album with. I think it was called Bennett Sings Berlin, for Irving Berlin. So here I am, a year later, up in Durango, Colorado, working a very low-paying job, probably $2,000 a month salary, in computer support. And I stop at the convenience store on the way home, pick up the Durango Herald, open to the entertainment page, and there's this big master headline that says, Johnny Mathis's biggest album in years, his new composer's album. My jaw dropped. I thought, what? So I read the article, and Johnny Mathis says his friend Jay Landers suggested the idea to him, and he thought it was a great idea, so he did it. But I want to be perfectly clear on this. John wasn't dissing me. John wasn't doing anything behind my back. He just forgot. Because this is a couple of years later, and Jay comes in and pitches it a different way, and it sounds good to him at the time then. So he went and he did it. It wasn't personal. There was nothing whatsoever wrong with how he thought or what he did. But the fact is, he did it. Now, I'm making $2,000 a month as a computer support person in Durango, Colorado. And remember, My When Will I See You Again Mathis album, the first royalty check was $100,000 for that. Can you imagine worldwide what his most successful album in years, the Composer's album, earned his producer? Gotta be $1 million. Positive, gotta be $1 million. Oh my. Now look, I'm not a monetary guy. I did music for the love of music, but come on now. Wow, that might have helped. And if you look back at the Odds and Ends tune that was my publishing that he didn't want to do, that would have created some extra bucks for me too. But this one was a big one, and I will never forget it. So I called my ex-wife then, Mary Mather, who had been with me backstage with John, and I said, Mary, guess what the Dinosaur just recorded? The Composer's album. Oh my goodness, you can't make this stuff up. Okay, 2 more Johnny Mathis stories and I'm out of here, okay? They came to me via Darnielle Pershing because Darnielle was on the road as John Mathis's conductor with him for years. First story is they're at a concert in the Deep South and all the power goes out just as the event was starting, so no lights, the place just goes dark. And John Mathis turns to his orchestra and says, does anybody here have a flashlight? And somebody did. So John took the flashlight, shined it on his face, and started singing, Chances Are. And he sings the entire song till the lights come back on. Wow, is that poise? Is that spontaneity? Is that special? Yeah, I wish I'd been there to see that. The second one is, Darnielle talks about being overseas in the Orient with John Mathis, and part of the road contract at all their cities required that there be a rehearsal orchestra the day before performances so that everybody knew their notes and how to work with Darnielle and what was going to happen, all that stuff. So Darnielle and John show up at this venue overseas in the Orient, and there's the orchestra, and they fully rehearse the show. They're ready to go for the next night. Everything's great. So the next night, Darnielle walks down. This was the way he entered in that arena. He walks down center aisle to the podium where he raises his arms to conduct. When he looks at the orchestra, they don't look familiar. And he doesn't know what to do, but he does the show. And after the show, he asked somebody involved with the concert, he said, wait a minute, those aren't the same musicians that we had yesterday. And this individual says, yeah, you're right. Yesterday was the rehearsal orchestra. Today, for the concert, that's the real orchestra. Isn't that a great story? Okay, that's all I got. I really liked working with Johnny Mathis. He's a gentleman. He's a warm, kind individual and a thorough professional. He knows his songs, he shows up on time, he sings his ass off, and you end up with a good product. What more can you ask for? So I'm delighted that I offered to do Ronnie Dyson for free to Columbia Records, and Harvey got me the Johnny Mathis album that certainly paid a few bills for Carol and me at the time that we didn't expect. Okay, that's it for now. And as always, thanks for watching. I appreciate you guys. Also, love your comments, both positive and negative. Please let me know what you think. And you guys take care.